Welcome to coding challenge number 1. This is our motor and wheel challenge activity. So the first thing you want to do is open up the graphical robot C. There are 2 robot C programs on the computer. Make sure you click the one that says graphical. There is a picture of it on the activity sheet. Next thing you can do is just hit OK in this message. Just saying to confirm that we have a secure connection, which we do since we are plugged into school Wi-Fi. Okay, now we have our program all opened up here. First thing we're going to do is hit here on the top left and get new file. This is going to give us the new spot to put our first line of code and build down from there. And on the left, we also have all of the options for our code that we can drag out and drop in. If you want to see it a little more, you can drag this out so you can read everything. Now, there's a couple things we have to do before we can actually start writing our code. The first thing we need to do is go to Robot and then go to VEX Cortex Communication Mode. You gotta make sure it is selected USB only. For this activity, we are doing USB only because we are plugging right into a test bed, not an actual robot. When we get to some of the later activities when we are testing with the robot, this is when we might use that VEXNet or USB option, but USB only for now. Next, you wanna go to Robot again. You're going to go down to platform type. You want to make sure we have VEX 2.0 Cortex selected. VEX 2.0 Cortex. And then we also need to select natural language PLTW. Since our course is a Project Lead the Way course, we're going to learn all of the coding in the Project Lead the Way language. So we need to select natural language Project Lead the Way. Okay, now we are ready to get started with our actual code. So our level says, program the left motor and the right motor to turn when you press the push button. When the push button is not pressed, the motor should be off. So the first thing we need to do with that is actually set up our motors and the push button in our program. Okay, right now it gives us kind of just a default bunch of motors and sensors and buttons and all kinds of stuff already in here, but we need to customize that for ourselves. So we're going to go to this motor and sensor setup. Click on that. Like I said, here's the default stuff. We don't have all these in here. So anything that's not the left motor, the right motor, or a push button, we can actually just get rid of. It'll clear things up, make it easier. So we're going to get rid of our motor, delete, and then we can click this little drop-down menu. It gives us a bunch of options. We're just going to hit no motor. Then the next thing we need to do for our motors is make sure that our left motor and our right motor are in the correct ports, which right now they are not. In our test bed, the left motor is in the port number 1. So we're going to hit left motor. We can retype it into port 1. We can delete it from port 3. And in this little drop-down menu here, we're going to be selecting VEX 269 motor right here. That's the type of motor that we are using. Now we can do the same thing with the right motor. And notice as I type in right motor, when I'm naming it, I'm doing lowercase first word, and then I'm capitalizing the big M there. Okay, when we're writing code, we can't put a space in between words. So to symbolize that we have a space there, since those are 2 words, we have to capitalize this second letter here, big M. You'll have to do that when we're writing all of our code. Again, select VEX 269 motor. Okay, now our motors are set up. The next tab up here is analog sensors. We don't really use many of those. We will use them in the next activity, but that's it. So for all these, we can just get rid of them. It'll be easier for us to read and see what we're doing. So no sensor, delete everything in here. There's no analog sensors in this activity. The last tab, VEX Cortex Digital Sensors. This is where we're going to have our push button. Okay. There's a lot of, again, preset stuff in here that we don't need. So go ahead, first start off, just clear it all out. Clear out all these names. All these are going to be no sensor, no sensor. I know it's kind of a hassle at points to have to clear everything out, but it'll make it easier for us in the end to see. We are now going to put our push button into digital port 12, all the way at the bottom. Again, as I'm typing in, push lowercase and then capitalize that B, push button. Hit our drop down menu. We're going to be selecting digital in. This is saying that the sensor we have doesn't do anything to our code or anything, doesn't run any code until we put something into the system. Since we're using a button, we're going to say, okay, nothing's going to happen when the button isn't pressed. But when we press that button, now it runs the code. We are putting something into the system by pressing the button. So digital in, you can hit apply, we can hit OK, and now we are ready to bring our code in and write the actual program itself. Okay, remember, we're not only writing a program, but we are writing an algorithm that then we will download to the robot eventually, and that is programming the robot. Okay, so at this point on your activity sheet, you should be towards the bottom where we say helpful hints. Okay, this is going to give you a couple hints on what codes you're going to use. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to write here for this, but I will tell you which codes we are using, and your job will be to put them in the right order. Okay, so remember, we are programming the left motor and the right motor to turn when you press the button. When the push button is not pressed, the motor should be doing nothing. So what we're going to first do, we're going to need a repeat forever command. This orange one on the left, we can drag it and you can just click and hold, and then you drag it and you place it. Notice it gives us a spot for a new line always below. What the repeat forever is going to do is saying anything inside of this bracket here. Notice you can put stuff in this middle here. Anything inside is going to just repeat forever. It's going to be an endless loop. From the moment we hit start to the moment we hit stop, it's just going to continue running that in a big circle. Okay. Also inside of that, we're going to want to scroll down on the left. Remember, we can pick all of our options here. So here, we're going to scroll down just a little bit. We're going to be in this if else. If/else. We can click, drag. We're going to drop that right in the middle of our repeat forever command. Okay. So this is going to say if something is done, then it runs this middle code. Else, otherwise, if this isn't happening, then we're going to run this. So this kind of gives us two options for our code. For our case, we are going to select if the push button, this one right here that we selected, you can hit the drop down menu to select that, push button equals 0, then we are going to either start motor, right here, this one, or you may need to use stop motor. That one you have to select. And anything you want to get rid of, you can just click and drag to the trash can. Okay. So if push button equals 0, notice in the helpful hints, I have written down here that it says when the button is not pressed, we have a value of 1. When the button is pressed, we have a value of 0. So this is saying when the button is pressed, because we have a 0, we'll push the button, and it'll give it a value of 0, and it's going to run whatever's in here. If the button does not equal 0, meaning it would equal 1, then it's going to run here. And your goal is to use start motor again, and stop motor, just like I showed you here, in whatever order you need to have the motors turn on when you press the button and have the motors turn off when you're not pressing the button. Okay, and this is pretty much all you need other than start motor and stop motor in the right spots. So go ahead and get started. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, the last thing I want to tell you for our start motor and stop motor, this number here, 95, just leave that. That is the speed that the motor spins. That's our pretty standard speed, so we can just leave that. We'll go ahead, play around. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see what you come up with at the end. We'll bring over the test bed, we'll download it to the robot, and then we will see what happens. Okay, so first we need to plug our orange cable into our computer, and then the second end into our VEX 2.0 Cortex. Now we can flip it on. Again, make sure that battery is plugged in, which it is. We now see 2 green lights, which means we are all hooked up and ready to go. So here's my code for activity 1 here. First, we want to click on compile program. This is basically going to make sure there's no errors and make sure we're in the right language, and then we can download to Robot. Again, sometimes that message log pops up. Just click back on the upper tab back to your code. And then now this is where we will go and hit start. And then on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a spot where you can see what the sensors are reading as we test the system. So let's go ahead and hit start and see what happens. So once start is pressed, it means your code is ready to run on your Cortex. We can make sure we have our motors plugged into the correct spots, and we have our push button plugged into digital 12 as well. And then we have our left and our right motor here. So let's go ahead and press the button and see if they spin. You can see when I press the button down they do. When I let go of the button they stop, which means our code is working correctly. If this is what you're doing, then you are all set. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.